Able to be here. My name is David Rowley, and I'm the Government and Community Relations Director with the Utah Valley Chamber of Commerce, and we're glad that you were able to join us. Want to begin with the Pledge of Allegiance, if you'd all rise and repeat after me. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. We want to thank especially all of our candidates this evening for coming. We are grateful that they were able to join us. We're very excited to hear from them throughout the evening. I want to just start off, and you've probably seen these as you walked in, the rules of engagement for this evening. We want this to be a very civil, a very nice event that we can all learn from. We want everybody to come away with a positive experience and with a greater appreciation for civic service and an understanding of the ideals and the ideas and the positions of the candidates. So we ask that you do that. This is not a campaign rally. This is a time for us to listen and to understand. Outbursts will not be tolerated. We will ask, if you do, that you leave the auditorium. That's not the purpose of our meeting tonight. If you wish to show your support for or against an opinion, please indicate thumbs up, thumbs down. We will allow you to applaud at the end of the time. We've asked that be the only finger you showcase this evening. There are many others on your hand, but just try the thumb. And we do have a lot of first-time delegates here tonight, and we want them to know what the best is of Utah County, the best is of all of the people here, the best that this legislative process can offer. So with that, I'm going to turn the time over to Stephen Wright. Stephen is the chair of our Legislative and Policy Committee for the Chamber of Commerce. Stephen?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. I want to start out by, again, thanking our candidates for being here tonight. If there's one thing I've learned in all the years I've worked in politics, it's how much these candidates sacrifice and the things they have to deal with. We just got through with a 45-day legislative session, and to see the work that these individuals put in and the sacrifices they make, it truly is inspiring, and I'm glad that there's people that are willing to do that, because we need them. So I want to just explain how it's going to go tonight. We have two different sessions. We'll have the first session will be with Bill Lee, Brandon Gordon, and Gregory Graves. And if you can go ahead and come up and take your seats, we're going to give you a couple minutes here in just a second so Brandon, you're in the middle, Bill, you're here on the left, yep, and then, yes, thank you. So we will have two sessions, and the candidates, will give them each 2 minutes to do a quick introduction of who you are. The questions that they're going to be asked came from questions that were submitted by many of you and by chamber members via Qualtrics survey. And our moderator for this evening's event is the Executive Director, President, CEO, of the Utah Valley Chamber of Commerce, Curtis Blair. So with that, I want to reiterate those rules of engagement are important. I've been to debates that just turn into shouting matches, actually more from the audience than anybody else, and we just don't want to have that here. We really want this to be an opportunity to become informed and to get to know the candidates, and then you can go campaign outside of the building. So with that, we will turn the time over to Curtis. Are you taking it from here?
Yep, thank you.
Okay.
Yep, thank you. Let me just take a minute, turn around and say hello. We'll move from the right to my left and have each of you state your name and provide us with an introduction. Billy.
All right, thank you, Curtis, and thank you for being here. As always, I recognize my wife that's here and one of my sons, and I'm thankful for their support, their continued support as we go forward. We have 7 children. We've raised them in this county, and we love Utah County, and we love what it's provided for us and what we've been able to do to provide for it as well. To start off, government is like fire. It can either be a useful tool, or it can be a fearful master. And this last couple of years, we've seen all kinds of different parts of that, haven't we? We found that, you know, when we're looking at taxes, it can raise our taxes. We've also looked at mandates, mask mandates and other mandates that were coming down. We've looked at businesses shut down. In this county, we tried not to do that. We tried to find ways to keep them open. So as we're looking at what government can do, it's like fire in many ways, and it can be that fearful master, or it can be a public servant. For myself as an individual and working in government, I've strived over and over and over to be that public servant. A lot of times people ask this question, they'll say, well, you're a politician. And I've said this, you know, to them over and over. I prefer to be a public servant called a public servant. Because if you break the politic apart, poly meaning many, and a tick being a bloodsucker, that'd be many bloodsuckers. And so with that, you know, I find that as we go forward, we can go forward either with strength and confidence, and Utah County is doing a phenomenal job right now as we're moving forward, and we're doing great things together. We're doing things in which we're trying to use that fire in an appropriate way. And so thank you, and thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you.
Hello everyone, I'm Brandon Gordon. I'm excited to be here, and I appreciate you being here. I hope tonight as I answer these important questions that I hope to earn your vote. I have lived here my whole life. My wife is from Pleasant Grove, and I grew up in Spanish Fork. We're both all our lives, and we're raising our 6 children here, and we have opened and sold many businesses and been a part of this wonderful county. I continue to own and operate a business, an insurance business right now. It's so important to me as I see what is happening in our state, and as we grow, making sure that we understand how business is done in our county. One of the most important things for me is law enforcement. It's my top priority. I joke with people and say that one of my campaign promises is to install a bat signal on the county building as Commissioner Gordon, and that I would be able to signal the sheriff whenever we need to. However, I feel like I received a good signal from the sheriff back when I was endorsed by the FOP, and that means so much to me. I've been on the Spanish Fork City Council now for 11 years. I'm in the middle of my 3rd term, and as I've worked with the chief of police there to ensure that the #1 goal is to keep our family safe, that's really important to me. We don't always get along on the council in Spanish Fork. We strive to, but that's an important role of government. As we disagree, we try to find the best conclusion as candidates. And so, again, my name is Brandon Gordon. I hope to earn your vote tonight as we debate these important questions. And again, thank you for coming.
These lights are so bright, I'm going to stay seated because I don't know if I could see you, but my name is Greg Graves. I am excited to be here. I got back into this race because my wife decided to tell me that I was going to stand up and say something, because we've noticed the same thing that we've all noticed throughout this country the last few years. We have a problem. And it's not just a problem of government telling us to wear masks and things like that, but we have a redefinition problem. Or my wife, who's a 3rd grade teacher, will tell you, we have a reading and a comprehension problem. And we have the same problem here in Utah County. I know I fought it when I was a commissioner several years ago from things that would come out of the attorney's office. But the reason I say we have a reading comprehension problem is The word fiscal conservative is something we throw around and we pretend that we actually are. Well, if you actually look up the definition, that means we cut taxes, we limit government, we don't increase budgets, but even the federal Republican Party, all they want to do is spend, and we're anti-tax, but we spend. Well, when I was the commissioner with Commissioner Lee, and we were sworn in 8 years ago, excuse me, the county budget, the timer's disappeared for me. The county budget was just over $70 million. Well, it's now at $135 million. So we have a spending problem because we say we're anti-tax. Well, those two things don't go in harmony. So something has to be done about it if we're going to stand up and actually take our county back. Utah County is a county that is perfect in every way because we let the city governments do it. I see my former mayor up there, and I always told him in every meeting, I've got the best mayor in the world. I moved from Springville to Spanish Fork, and in my neck of the woods, that's fighting words. But I love it. And the reality is I love our cities, and the Utah County plan is to not have the county be part of the government. It's to let the cities take care of it. And so that's what I want to restore.
Thank you, Gregory Graves. I don't think that you would mention this, but I was told a few minutes ago where you came from to be here. I understand you came from a viewing of your own father.
Sure.
And it means a lot that you take some time, especially.
But to be fair, Commissioner Lee is only about 2 days ahead of me. He's suffering through the same thing.
Yeah. Okay. Let's begin. Thank you. I'm going to address this question first to Brandon Gordon. Brandon, is it more important to administer county government or make county government more efficient? You will have, it's an either or, and 1 minute to respond.
So I think this, as I listen to the question, I don't think that either one of those answers really is a fit. It feels like we have to administer, we have to budget, we have to be appropriate with the funds that we have in the budget that we have to deal with. One of the things that we're very proud of in Spanish Fork is making sure that our balanced budget every year is done with synergy. And when you see the different department heads come together and we talk about what the needs are. This year, as the police chief came to us as a council this year, he said, I'm good, I don't need any new officers, and we're up to speed. You've supported us, and we have the tools that we need to be successful. That's the important part, is working in synergy in government and making sure that all of the different departments of the county are heard and have all of their needs met.
Okay, thank you. Bill Lee, to respond to that, what is it like to balance a budget for the county? And what are the priorities of our budget?
Okay, so, balancing a budget, we're under law to do that. We have to have a balanced budget. And so the priorities that come in there and they vary. They can vary depending on, if we have the needs that are right away. There may be immediate needs that are coming in. They may be long-term looks that we're trying to do. As you look through our budgeting process and what we're trying to accomplish, a lot of times we're trying to find that balance between it because we don't have unlimited resources. And so without unlimited resources, we have to find the balance between what is appropriate, what's needed, and then we use the department to do prioritization. A lot of times they'll have prioritization lists all the way down, which we try to find according to the revenue sources that we have, the priority lists that will allow us to go forward in a proper way. And they're doing that, and we do that together as a county and as a county government.
Thank you. Gregory Graves, should growth in Utah County take place with a primary focus on cities or in the county, and why?
Okay, well, excuse me. Well, the Utah County General Plan that was established in '79 actually calls for all development to be done by the cities. The reason is because the county doesn't have a water department, a sewer department. We don't have all those facilities. So letting the cities who do it much better, having the same zoning and consistency for their residents, as well as the public safety, because as you know, the sheriff's department would then have to be stationed in Spanish Fork and service Eagle Mountain. Oh wait, they do that. I don't know that that's the most efficient way, right? But the reality is at the end of the day, if that's how we're going to be as a county and have our cities maintained, then that's good. That's what we've been doing. That's not what Salt Lake County does. It's completely different. So for us, the county government needs to continue to be small. That's why our budget is already too high. That's why we don't need higher taxes from the county. Maybe they do in the cities to handle the growth. But the county general plan does not actually talk about growth for us. It's to push it into the cities and incorporate it.
Brandon, what's some of our biggest limiting factors for growth then in this county?
For me, I think limiting factors would be transportation, and as we grow, our roads connect our communities with each other. As one of the only ones that served on a city council, I understand how that growth should happen within the cities. And so as a community grows, say the city of Spanish Fort, that synergy happens with a lot of different factors with our planning commission at our city and the planning commission of the county. And as that synergy happens, those growth obstacles are vetted and understood, and we work to make sure that we're growing smart. And that's probably the most important part, because we can grow, but if it's not in the right way, it's not going to do us any good as we try to preserve and let our kids live here. If that's you know, my main goal is to keep my children here close and let them have a great place to raise their kids.
So transportation then, in response to that growth. Bill Lee, what do you think is the greatest limiting factor for growth?
Well, when we look at our county, we have over 200,000 developable acres, and so we've got land for growth. But for me, water is a major limiting factor. Of course, transportation and making sure we have that in place, which we're working on a collaborative basis throughout the state. We have one of the most organized fashions that's recognized throughout the United States on our joint transportation plan. They call it a model. But water is something that if we don't have, then we have a lot of dirt, but we don't have something there that we need, and we all need that. And so for me, as we're looking at water, one of my main focuses has got to be water. When I wake up in the morning and turn that tap on, it came from those before us who built the structures, the infrastructure, and everything else. It's our turn now to do something for generational projects into the future, like aquifer recharges, making sure that we have them in the appropriate ways, working with the cities, because they're the ones that are going to drive most of it.
Thank you. Gregory, did Brandon or Commissioner Lee miss any limiting factors of growth in your opinion? They've mentioned transportation and water. Any others?
No, I believe that transportation is probably the greatest element. And the reason I say is because for me, transportation is part of the role of government, because I believe that in a limited role of the government, that they are here to protect our rights, our safety. That's what the role of government is. And without proper transportation, our public safety vehicles cannot get to whoever needs help in time. And our problem is, I was fortunate to participate in a short time with the Point of the Mountain project. And we all agree that our problems are, we have a lot of east-west corridors. Well, my next door neighbor growing up was Wilford Clyde, and he sat in our South County Mayor's meeting and says, yeah, but what are we all gonna do south of Provo on the north-south? We have a lot of issues on transportation issues that actually affect our public safety, getting to hospitals, getting to urgent care, or just simple needs. And so as we continue to grow and need more of those facilities, building these things without transportation and proper flow for public safety is a huge issue.
So would you rather see an emphasis on private development or public access for some of our wonderful natural resources, the lake, Bridal Veil? How do you balance that?
Well, for me, the balance is really easy. Because of the county's general plan and having served in the commission, being one of the two commissioners that purchased Bridal Veil Falls to protect it, that is what the role of the county government is there for, is to protect those resources for all of the communities, but in partner with the cities. Part of the things that we did with the TRCC fund or the TRT fund that we collect is able to help build things like in Orem with Mayor Brunst. I saw Hyundai All Abilities Park. I was proud to be able to cast a vote for that, or participate with Thanksgiving Point, helping to educate our youth by giving scholarships to them to participate in things like that. So using our natural resources. Going and fixing Utah Lake. That was something that we talked about 8 years ago, 7 years ago, 6 years. We've talked about it forever. It's time to get off the pot and go, as my grandpa would say. Let's get it done. We need to clean up the water. We need to dredge it. We've talked about it long enough. Things are getting more and more expensive, not cheaper by waiting and delaying.
It's interesting that you bring up the lake. Commissioner Lee, what do you think about dredging the lake? What do you think about improving, restoring it to its natural state is the phraseology I'm hearing.
Yeah, so, I tell this story. Once I was given a presentation, and it was for a $75 million project, and it was a 45-minute presentation, and I was asked the question, will you support it? And I said, as an executive and as a future executive, it would not be right for me to go forward and say yes or no on a 45-minute presentation. The time on this now is still in its infancy as we're looking at what needs to be done. And so for me to say one way or the other, I think would be a derelict of my duties as an executive. But I want to point this out. Utah Lake, to me, I love Utah Lake. I sail on that lake, I've camped on that lake. We have to realize that man has interfered with that lake to a certain point. We've dumped raw sewage in the past into it. We've put carp into it. We've affected it. I am so glad now that the focus is finally coming to Utah Lake. However it may be, it's coming to Utah Lake, and I applaud that.
Thank you. Brandon, can Utah Lake be a destination lake?
I believe it can be a destination lake. If you look at one of my jokingly campaign promises is we're going to dredge the lake, build a wall between us and Salt Lake County and make them pay for it. So, sorry, but if you really look at what a gem that could be, we know what we get if we do nothing, right? We can see that today. We know that something can be better there as we restore it. If we would have looked at that opportunity in the 80s more, when we had a proposal, perhaps, we're having different conversations. But I believe that as development comes in, the development helps to pay for that as well, because they benefit from that. And we find out ways to help fund the dredging and the improvements that would happen at the lake by the development. And that's how we do things in Spanish Fork, and I believe that's how we should do it as we move forward with the lake.
Thank you. That concludes portion one, and that gives me an opportunity to ask our audience if you would scoot towards the middle, and I am sitting in the middle. So if you could make your way, we were asked by UVU Facilities to make room for more seats on the aisleways. So if you could move in to the center of your aisle, your row. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate your cooperation. We'll now move into the yes/no portion of tonight's debate. To give you an example of this, I would ask, did you ski the mountains of Utah during this last winter season? And the answer is either yes or no. Now, I'm sure there's more behind that. It could have been cross-country, it could have been downhill. But this is more of a rapid fire, and I'll begin with Commissioner Lee. Commissioner Lee, do you envision in your lifetime a bridge spanning Utah Lake?
Yes, unless I die tomorrow, but, yes.
Brandon?
I've not seen a plan that I like yet.
Gregory?
No.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Lee, back to you. Do you feel that air quality is a detractor to bringing businesses and residents to Utah County? Yes or no? And I will give you 30 seconds to reply to that. Do you feel that air quality is a detractor to recruiting businesses and talents to Utah?
Yes, it can be. I have not seen that as of yet a major detractor, but it is a concern that I've seen businesses bring up over and over. But as for now, I have not seen that as one which has pushed them away from.
Candidate Brandon or Gregory, have you seen any evidence of air quality being a deterrent for companies wanting to come to our community? Brandon.
So for me, in a former life, I worked for an asphalt company, and that asphalt would get, hot plant would get shut down as a result of air quality, right? And there's certain regulations that we need to live by. I think we can do better with our air quality, and there's conservative ways to do that.
Thank you. Gregory Graves, is air quality an issue for you, and what other ways can we, what other problems would you address as commissioner?
So there is definitely a component of air quality that has to do with businesses coming and not coming. By that, there are a lot of businesses that when they come in, they want to see expanded front runner services so that they can have those options for employees. That's something that Adobe mentions. They want a heavier dose of clean buses, things like that. That's some of the influences that we fight from outside that when they want to relocate here, that those discussions need to be had.
Thank you. Brandon, given that you sit on city council, this might be an appropriate question, and I'm going to follow it up with Commissioner Lee for his response. Is it appropriate to help a city that requests county help in providing property tax incentives to attract a company that brings high-paying jobs and a promise of economic prosperity to that city?
Is this 30 seconds? Is that? Yes, and in fact, with this current commission, we've done that in Spanish Fork. We've saved a business from relocating to Idaho, for example. Young Living was a business that we did that for, and we were able to keep them in town, and their requirements were to increase by at least 150 jobs, and they've done that, and so my answer is yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Lee, does it get complicated? Is it complex to do that? What has your experience been?
Yes, and so it is appropriate for, the city to, and this, so that part of government is a tool that the cities can use. And if they're using it in an appropriate way, I'm all for looking at what can be done. Now, we have to realize that we're looking at it on a county basis and not necessarily on the city side. So it's a lot broader picture than just the city. But if it's done in the appropriate way, and it does get complicated, and there's a lot of different issues that we have to wade through as we're doing that.
Thank you. Gregory, do you support cities using sales tax incentives to attract retail or commerce businesses to their cities?
I was with you till retail. That's the hard one for me. Retail businesses like Target and Walmart, and I know that as a Spanish Fork resident, that is the buzzword we all hear all the time. Target, Target, Target. But the reality is I'm not in favor of tax dollars for a retail business because of the nature of those businesses. They're not necessarily highly skilled and highly paid jobs that help, in my opinion, the society that I think that we should have.
So when I was saying retail, you were interpreting big box retail. How would you help the small business owner to thrive in an otherwise pretty hot economy?
Well, that's part of what having a low tax rate and having a low mill rate does. Being one of those counties that a lot of the county employees, when you're a commissioner, will show you the chart and say, out of the 29 counties, look, Commissioner, we're number 27, 28, and 29. I'm like, yes, we are. Look how good that is. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't things to improve, but at the same time, I'm proud of the fact that we are that way. So why would we change? Or why would we sacrifice our values?
Right. Thank you for that. Brandon, does growth equal prosperity for Utah County residents?
Good growth does, bad growth does not. I would think in response to the last question, House Bill 151 was passed this session, and so that's going to eliminate the opportunity for a city to be able to do a tax incentive for sales. Manufacturing is still applicable, and in Spanish Fork, I say if I were to do something like that in the past, if I do a Target, for example, I win the women vote and I lose the husbands that have to pay for it.
Thank you. Commissioner Lee, how can we ensure or promote prosperity with the hyper growth that we will be experiencing? We're just seeing the tip of the iceberg. How can we, in fact, maintain the quality of life with the kind of growth projections that are being forecasted?
Well, I'm a believer in conservative principles, and those conservative principles, if applied, will allow for that to happen. We have to realize government is not the answer to all of our problems. It is sometimes the interferer of what's going on that is good. The stars of our community are always the people, the nonprofits, the churches, and those are the stars of our community. And if we allow them to be the ones that go forward and do it right, prosperity will be here for us. We just have the infrastructure side.
Thank you. Thank you for that. In the Utah Valley Chamber of Commerce, there are 6 pillars that help us get our arms around the most important growth issues. Of course, education, workforce development are among them, transportation we talked about earlier, housing, healthcare, natural resources, business environment. Of those that I listed, which of these have been something you're most proud of, Commissioner Lee, in your work? And I'll list those again. Education, workforce development, transportation, housing, healthcare, natural resources, and business environment.
Yes, I think they're all pillars for a reason, because they stand and help support. And so all 6 of them are fantastic. But I want to emphasize one of them, and that is education and workforce development. We have 3 universities in this valley. A lot of people think we only have 2, but we have another one called Rocky Mountain University. And with them, they've also done the college there, which is Norda College, which they're building there on that golf course. They're doing a fantastic job, and they've asked me to help them out on their funding levels. And so that is one that we have to keep going with, because there's a lot going on, and as we educate the young and we educate those that are there, it gives us prosperity and opportunities.
Yeah. There are those that would say, Commissioner, that we actually have 5 universities in this valley, if you include MTech.
Right.
And you did mention RMU, Rocky Mountain University, and Norda, although they're cousin companies, they're now very separate. And of course, BYU and UVU. Brandon, if you were elected as commissioner, what would be one of the first pillars that you would want to stand up as commissioner? Again, I'll read those: education, workforce development, transportation. I know you mentioned that earlier, and that may be the one. Our housing gap, though, may be considered a greater problem right now that needs to be solved. Healthcare, natural resources, or business environment.
So I did mention earlier transportation, and I think if I look at the 2 that I would focus on as a commissioner, it would be transportation and business environment. Making sure we have a low tax burden, making sure that we have the infrastructure in place to support our businesses as they do what they do best. One of the things that I've appreciated being a Main Street business in Spanish Fork, that is the first tranche of COVID money came down, we as elected officials, we made sure that the COVID funds, we distributed them to our citizens in the form of a gift card, but could only be used on Main Street. And so as a business owner, that meant a lot. You couldn't go to Costco or Lowe's with that. You had to go, and with tears in their eyes, our little restaurants and our little sports store on Main Street just said thank you. You looked out for us, and so as we grow the business community, we can't forget about Main Street.
Thank you for that. Gregory, what about housing? We haven't heard about that yet from our previous 2 comments. How, as commissioner, would you get your arms around this tremendous challenge that we have of supply-demand and the increasing cost of housing and rent in Utah Valley?
So, again, going back to the general plan, that's really not the role of the commission, because again, getting out of the development business is the role of the county, to go to the city so that they are handling it that the right way. So for me, making sure that the annexation plans are up to date for all the cities to properly let everybody know where the proper growth is going to happen and do it the right way would be essential. For me, the key is education. It's always been education. My wife's an educator, my mother, my sister, my grandmother, they're all educators. And I actually put that into practice. I like to take and find ways for multiple use for tax dollars, for example. So that education pillar is the most important to me. When I helped fund the Butterfly Biosphere, and we were the last $2 million in, even Commissioner Lee said, if you want the scholarships, it's up to you. I did. I made sure that we have scholarships for the next 40 years for classes from charter schools, public schools, and private schools to attend at no cost for low income so that they have those opportunities for education.
Thank you for that, and I don't disagree, but I want to stay on housing for one more minute. What do you propose would happen if you were confronted with a city that said, we have done our part, and we're ready for someone else to do theirs, and you've heard of the acronym NIMBYism? How would you as a county commissioner address that frame of thought?
Well, I can tell you it's ugly, because when I first got in, that is actually the case going on in part of the county. Within Alpine city limits, you have a lot of those that do not want to annex some of those developments, and so the county is left with different zoning. So it is hard, it is a balance, because when we have private property rights that I know all three of us believe in, and allowing for that, we don't want to stop those kind of developments. But at the same time, that isn't part of the plan. So it's really working together with your cities. I mean, it's interesting, the buzzword that everybody hates is high-density housing. Well, my grandfather grew up building duplexes, which I used to think was high-density housing growing up. What I'd lived for those days.
Is it appropriate to have high-density housing, and if so, Brandon, where and why?
I think the only way to stop growth in Utah County is to make it less hospitable, and shame on all of you for making it such a wonderful place. But the reality is I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to make this a worse place to come through. As we grow, you know, we talk about high density and we talk about single family homes, and in Spanish Fork, you know, townhomes and high density becomes such a word that people don't like, right? But we've got a plan for that. You've got to look at your general plan in your communities. And I had a valuable lesson over the 11 years that I've served on the city council. This last fall, we did a public hearing with a lot of farmers that are still in the county, but bordering Spanish Fork, and they all showed up at that public hearing and looked us in the eyes, right? And told us how important it was that their farm ground, if they want to keep farming it, they need to keep farming it. But if they want to have a plan to develop it, please work with us to develop it. And that was very telling for me, having come from the farm.
Thank you for that. So Commissioner Lee, you've had a 30,000-foot view to this question, but let me pivot slightly. What do you feel the role of agriculture is in Utah County?
So I just came from the meeting with the Farm Bureau. They had their event tonight, in which I was rushing to get over here. And agriculture, most people don't realize that in the state of Utah, Utah County is #1 when it comes to gross receipts in the state of Utah for agriculture. It is a very important part of who we are as a county. And so agriculture, I've been a friend to agriculture in the way of agricultural protection, greenbelt status, in the way of taxation on lands. Agriculture plays a vital role for us in our county. A lot of times we think it's split. You know, you kind of go Provo South, more agriculture, Provo North is more urbanized, but even to the point to where we were looking at agriculture in the way of small farms, and we passed this year, you can go down to 1 acre instead of the 5 acres in an urban area, so you can have high intensity when it comes to farming and agriculture within our urban areas.
Thank you. Gregory, give an example of how you would save taxpayers' money.
Oh, I got a couple of them. Near the end of my first term, Commissioner Lee and I made a fun trip with the County Assessor Chris Polson to Sandy Springs, Georgia. You want to see a model for how government should work? That was one of the funnest trips I've ever been a part of. The mayor opened us up. We had an appointment with him, and they were a city where everything that could be privatized was. And it was fantastic. And they still had issues like everybody else, but a couple specific examples for me is by state code, an HR department, we only have to have an HR manager, not an HR department. I would put that out to bid. Go to companies like ADP that are good at check processing, things like that. In our public works department, we buy every vehicle that we own, that we drive for the sheriff's office. Well, why do every other police departments and sheriff's departments everywhere lease them? Because it's more cost effective. We actually did audits for that, and we need to do that because that's how you save taxpayer money.
Thank you. Brandon, same question. How would you save taxpayer money?
So one of the things that we learned in a difficult way in Spanish Fork is that lawsuits can be very expensive. The county's been involved in some lawsuits, sued the largest city in Utah County, sued Governor Herbert. And those lawsuits, when you look at who wins in those situations, is the attorneys. We were involved in a lawsuit where, combined with 3 of our neighboring cities, Salem and Payson, against a utility provider down there, and it was $1 million in attorney fees. That's taxpayer dollars. And so we've got to be able to have the synergy to get back in the room when there's disagreements, because there's disagreements, and make sure that we are vetting those prior to going to something like that would waste taxpayer dollars.
Thank you. Commissioner Lee, maybe you can speak to that. When would it be appropriate for county government to sue cities with taxpayer funds?
So it's interesting because I saw this question. So I went to our attorneys and I said, you know, tell me, how many times have we filed a lawsuit against a city? The one that was referenced was in the Provo City case, in which our convention center, according to agreements in the past, were not being upheld to. And we had a $53 million convention center there without the possibilities or looking into the future of where the parking was going to come. It was a significant problem for us. And so for us to defend that, we had to defend it. That has to happen, even though negotiations broke down over and over and over. That was a last resort for us to go that route. And it was ironic that as soon as the new mayor came into place, those lawsuits went away, and we found a consolence with it. So there is a time for it. It's unfortunate. We don't want to do it, but we've found in the past that most of the times when I asked the lawyers again, they said, you know, we've probably had more lawsuits against us from cities than we've had against cities from us.
Thank you. Thank you for that response. I'm going to pivot slightly, and this may be our second to the last question, and then we're going to give each of you a minute to summarize. When I first came on as president of the chamber, there was a Proposition 9 on the table regarding a form of government for our county. Gregory Graves, would you support a mayor-council form of county government that would separate those legislative and executive functions?
So I'm not for that specifically. That's not my choice. But what I have said, and I would do it again and again, if the residents of Utah County want a different form of government, I would always be willing to put that on the ballot. But it has to be put on the ballot because it's a government of and for the people, and we the people should decide. It's not for commissioners to decide. I famously have said many, many times that George Washington, as our first president, had a small cabinet, but look how well the country was. Look how big and bloated government is now. Adding more people doesn't help. I think electing the right 3 people to work with the mayors in tandem is all we need to do. We've worked this way for a lot of years, and look how many people want to come here. Look how many businesses want to relocate. So why do we think it's broken? Why do we need to expand it? Shame on us if we have commissioners or other elected officials who are not available, that we're not able to reach. That's a shame on us for people for not vetting them better.
Thank you. Brandon, do you agree with that?
So for me, I was for a lot of the things in Prop 9. I come from a form of government in my community that a lot of your communities have, which are 5-member council and a part-time mayor. That's what we subscribe to. The cost of that in Spanish Fork is $115,000 a year. If you look at the cost of the commissioner's office right now, it's $1,218,000. So explain to me how that's more expensive. Now, I get if we had a full-time mayor like Salt Lake and full-time commissioners, right? That's where the argument gets in. But if the meetings are at night, like your city council meetings are, not at 2 in the afternoon on Wednesdays, you can participate as public people, and that's what I'm used to. You get great candidates that are business-minded people, mothers, people that can serve in more of a volunteer status rather than a career politician situation. So for that reason, I was for Prop 9.
Thank you. Commissioner Lee, is it realistic to have 3 individuals manage the tall task of commissionership with a growing county like we have. Governor Herbert mentioned that from the time that he was commissioner to where you would sit now, that's exponential growth. We have that coming. What do you feel about our form of government to be ready for the future?
You know, I love our form of government that we have. It can be responsive. And if all three commissioners yoke up and actually pull, then we'll find that the work can get done on an easy basis. Sometimes the joke is that you have in the commission, in the three-form commission, you have a workhorse, you have a show horse, and you have a lame horse. And we don't want that. We want workhorses in there. And I think the people expect to have workhorses in there that show up every single day, and they do the job, and they're meeting, and their doors are open, they're meeting with their constituents or with the other mayors or the body or businesses or whatever are coming through the door. And I think that's where, if we're all pulling, we may not always be getting along, or we may not always have the same ideas, but at least we're working, and we can have respect for that. I was the one that ran the opposition against Prop 9, that campaign, and so I put a lot of effort into that because I do not want to look like Salt Lake County or have their tax rate.
Okay, thank you. We appreciate your time. In fact, we'll dispense our last question given where we are at the hour, which is around innovation. I'll have to ask that of our next group coming in here at 8 o'clock. Let's, instead of, we started right to left, let's go from my left to right. We'll give you each 1 minute to summarize your thoughts, your impressions about this group, why you're running, and what you stand for.
Okay. Again, thank you for being here. I am truly honored to be here. I was truly honored to be commissioner last time. I honestly thought I would never win, and it was exciting, and I jumped in full bore, 2 feet in, and learned everything I could. That's why Jim Tracy will tell you, I was the hardest working guy he's ever been around. Jim Tracy and I developed a good relationship. But I want you to know there's a difference between me and other politicians. I'm not a politician. I don't go and seek endorsements. I just want you to go and ask people, go ask other elected officials, go ask people I worked with how it was like. And if that's how you want the county ran, great, then please vote for me. If not, don't, because these are 2 good men also. As far as I'm concerned in this county, if we don't get the spending under control, it's just gonna continue to get worse. Again, five people have more pet projects. So in my opinion, the smaller the government, more responsible people to actually cut and get serious about privatizing and limiting government is all we need. Thank you.
Thank you. Brandon,
So is this the closing statement?
this is your closing sentence.
Okay.
You've got 1 minute.
Terrific. Thank you again, everyone, for being here. One thing I didn't get to say earlier was my family, we still farm. And it's important for me as I take my kids down there and I show them at my dad's farm. It's called Gordo's Fun Farm, if you look it up. We grow any kind of squash you can think of. We sell it at the farmer's market. We sell sweet corn, red potatoes. And Governor Herbert trusted me to put me on the water quality board at the state level. And you look at the issues that surround where our food comes from, coming from the farm, teaching my kids the value of getting dirt under your nails is super important. I want them to be proud of the wonderful county that we have here. I'm very proud of the law enforcement endorsement that I've received from the FOP. That tells me, as I mentioned earlier, that they trust me as their candidate to keep us all safe. I'm Brandon Gordon. I'm running for County Commission Seat B, and I appreciate your vote.
Thank you. Commissioner Lee.
So I thought I'd stand up. Thank you for being here. I love this process from caucus night to convention. It is an intense process. I've been able to be in a lot of your homes and being on the campaign trail. And it is really exciting because you're able to go and visit with the people and reconnect. And that's what I love so much about it, the ideas, the thoughts that come out. And some of them are like, I've never even heard that before, so let's see if we can research it and help. I've been called the People's Commissioner for a reason, because my door is open. It's open to any of you to schedule. We try to return every single phone call and every single email as much as possible. We're not perfect at it. And that's the reason why I run, is I run for you. I run for my grandkids, I run for my kids, so that we can live in an environment here in which we have principles of freedom that we can adhere to, that we can love and enjoy and have the prosperity that is ours if we just will have the courage to take it. Thank you.